All right, let's look at creating a sequence and dropping some clips onto the timeline. So let's get in here. So the first thing I want to understand is that we're back into our project. We've got a bunch of clips. And the whole idea here is that a sequence is a bunch of clips on the timeline with music or any other type of, could be some still frames, could be some graphics. And that sequence on the timeline is what you'll eventually export as a film or a finished product. And I can have multiple sequences and I can stitch them together later as well. So I want to start by creating a sequence. There's a number of ways to do this. One, I can go down to the bottom and click the Make New button under a project, under the Project tab, and I can choose Sequence. Well, this is a difficult way to do it because you have to, have all these settings that you have to know what to use. Basically, I'm going to close that. The easiest way to create a sequence is to take one of your video clips. If you want it to be that format, that size, that speed, you're going to take one of those video clips. You're going to right-click, and you're going to choose New Sequence from Clip. And it's going to drop it on the timeline. Now, notice that there's a different symbol there from the video symbol, the clip symbol. The sequence symbol looks like a bunch of little tracks. So what I want to do is rename that. As soon as I do that, I want to rename it. So I can click there, and I can call this Sequence 1. All right, so now that I've renamed it, you'll see it's renamed over here as well. And the idea is that I've created a sequence. Now, after I created the sequence, the clip that I used to drop that sequence, to create the sequence, I can delete. And you'll see it still says Sequence 1. And so what I've done is I've created a sequence, and the idea is that I want to build my film up with a number of sequences, and then if it's either going to be one long sequence or a bunch of little sequences that are later stitched together. So now I've got my sequence on the timeline. I can start editing, and there's a bunch of different ways to edit with the application. I'm going to turn the sound on, and the sequence right now is in video clips, so I could put that sequence somewhere else if I want it. I'll move it later. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the first clip. I'm going to double click and load that up here, and the first way to use this is to scrub through. I just grab that scrubber and set an in and an out point. So say I want to start with the kid coming right up to the ball. I'm going to hit the mark in point, then I'll scrub along, and I'll set that as the out point, and I'll click the out point, and I've set an in and an out point for my clip. So if I want to drag the audio and the video all at the same time, I click here, I drag it down and drop it onto the timeline. And that's how I import or drop a clip on the timeline. Now, after I've got the clip on the timeline, I can grab it by the ends, and I can shorten it, or I can even extend it if I want. And so now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to grab another clip. I'm going to double click and open up another clip. That looks like it's pretty much the same thing. Let's go on to the next one after that. So that's the building. So let's say I want to take a piece of this. I'm going to set an in point. I'm going to set an out point. I'm going to drag it and drop it onto the timeline. And so what 90% of the time when you're editing, it's called a match cut, where you just have two cuts. You just cut from one to another. Sometimes you'll apply a transition like a fade or some sort of a transition in between the cuts. But a whole lot of editing is just matching cuts and putting cuts next to each other. In this case, the two cuts don't bear a direct resemblance to each other, a direct time frame resemblance, like it's not a story. What we're doing, we're just cutting from one to the other. So now I've got the two frames on the two clips on the timeline, and I can scrub through them using the scrubber. And I can play them using the playback controller, okay? And I can see the amount of time that they take up. I can grab here and I can pull those tracks open and see more of the tracks, or pull them closed. I can adjust the amount of time that they're taking up. It's not really adjusting the time, but how I'm seeing them. I can also grab this box here and open it up like so. And the idea is that I can drop the tracks directly on here. Now, after I drop them on here, I can continue editing them. If I grab the black selection tool, I can grab the end and I can shorten the track and then drag it and move it next to another track, or I can shorten it by clicking on the end or dragging it out to make it longer. And then I can go over, I can double click, open up another clip, set an in and an out point, grab that clip, drag it and drop it onto my timeline. So in this case, I dragged it above that clip. I could do that and have it transition like that, or I could click and place it right next to it. And when you have a automatic snapping on, most of the time you want to leave that on. And so the clip will just butt right up against it. So now when I play it, it's going to transition from one clip to the next. So here we go, from one clip, transitions to the next. And then we also have our audio underneath. And that's how I set up a sequence and how I import my clips. And then I view them up here in my source monitor. I could also just import the audio. If I click on the drag audio only, you see I'm just dragging down the audio for that clip. I don't know if this one has the audio. So I just drag down, or I could drag just the video. If I click on drag video and drag it down, you'll see that I'm dragged down just the video. And if I click in the middle here, it's going to drag both the audio and the video together. So you'll see there's the audio track and the video track. Okay. All right. So that's basically how you start your project. Let's stop there.